Happy Vlogmas! It's Sunday and we are about to go to the Christmas market because we promised the kids we would take them to the fair if they were good, and we kind of have to deliver. And all I really want is a day in my pajamas, but I'm gonna have to go and get dressed and do something with this and then go into town and enjoy the fair and maybe have a bratwurst. Probably have a bratwurst and then come home, have a quiet day and do some more reading because I have just started The Golden Enclaves by Naomi Novik and I'm barely into it, so I have no feelings yet, none. I've just started it, but I'm so excited to see what happens next, so I will report back. So we are back from the fair, the Christmas market. It was so lovely. It was so cold. So cold. Like the kind of cold where you just feel it in your bones. We've been home for a little bit now and I haven't warmed up yet. So that's not fun. But the fair was fun. We went to the carnival. We have a fun fair at the beach in Aberdeen, and that fun fair have brought some rides to the city centre, so it's quite nice because it means that you can go there without having to go down to the beach, especially in winter because it's so cold and the wind at the beach is just freezing. And there is a little market inside of Marshall College, which is in the city centre where the Christmas fair is, and there's lots of stalls. And it was really fun because we got to have the kids do some Christmas shopping and then we had lunch. And I got my bratwurst and the kids got some chips and then we all had some churros and were very, very full. So of course the kids wanted to go back on one of the rides straight afterwards. And I am very surprised and impressed that they did not throw up. After the sheer volume of food that they had consumed, I was worried. So very happy that all of the food stayed inside and that everybody had a really nice time, so that was lovely. And I'm really glad to be home now where we have heaters. I am now a third and a bit of the way through my book that I started this morning, The Golden Enclaves by Naomi Novik. I am a person who does not read a hardback with the jacket on, so the jacket is downstairs, but I do have sprayed edges and they are just gorgeous, so that's pretty cool. I also have Christmas nails because one of my stepkids wanted to paint my nails, so I said yes and I love them. But I'm also loving this book. This is the third book in the Scholomance series by Naomi Novik, and do not worry, I am going to endeavour to avoid any spoilers because I don't want to spoil a book for anyone, let alone a series. So I might be vague, I might be cryptic, but I will be honest. This series is about, firstly, it takes place in a school. Who could have guessed? And it's a school for wizards. And the school's a little bit unusual because it's actually actively trying to harm the students. There are no teachers, there are no staff. All of the food and cleaning and things is done magically or by the students. And our protagonist, Galadriel, who goes by Elle, is a little bit different to other students. Classic. Because she is basically meant for evil. She's meant for evil. The universe wants her to do bad things, but she doesn't want to be evil. She wants to be like her mother, who is just the kindest and sweetest, loveliest woman. And Elle just, whenever she tries to do nice things, tries to be kind, The universe makes things backfire for her. I really like that we have a main character who is trying to fight good and evil, but like in herself, where she just wants to put good things out, but the world doesn't want to take them. And I really like that. I have to admit that this book is my favourite so far in the series. I think. I mean, I'm not finished yet, so I don't want to cement my statement there. But so far, I think this is my favourite, because at this stage we have Elle, who has an awesome bunch of friends, and she's kind of come to terms with herself and her abilities, you know, what that means for her future. And this book picked up right after the events of the second book. And the last book was called The Last Graduate, and it was all about graduating. So this book, they have graduated, they are out of the school, and they are coping with the events of graduation. And historically, when students graduate from the Scholomance, they have to go through the main doors. Guarding those main doors are mals. Mals are basically demon creatures that want to suck all of the goodness and life out of the students. So a bit of a gauntlet to get out. And historically, hundreds of students don't survive that graduation ceremony, which feels like a very extreme graduation ceremony. And so yeah, this book is picked up immediately after. So Elle is back home with her lovely, lovely mum, and the book just sort of goes from there, because Elle is not happy with the events of the last book and kind of wants to fix things. And I am absolutely loving the direction that this book is taking so far. I have Elle and her band of friends, and they are just such a good, they're like that band of friends that you're like, I don't even know if you like each other. I don't know if you all like each other. I don't think you do. But there's ones that you know they like each other, and then there's another character, Liesel, who, does anybody like Liesel? I don't know. She seems very, very extreme and very opinionated, and I think every group maybe needs a Liesel, but I don't know if they like her or not. But they have got a quest, they've got a mission, and they are off to do that. And I love the way that this is one of those classic sort of fantasy stories where all of the so-called experts have tried something and it's not worked. It's not happening for them. And then suddenly in Swans, a magic school graduate who, guess what? She's got some skills and it's kind of very, very useful. So I like that. I like that everybody keeps sort of doubting Elle, and that's happened throughout the series, where it's almost as if nobody thinks that she can do things, and she's kind of amazing. So I'm really excited to see what she does next, because she's so powerful and sometimes kind of struggles to hold that power in. And I really want to know, I mean, honestly, like, the chaotic part of me just wants her to lose it, but then people might get hurt. But there's a little part of me that is like, oh, just let it all go. But maybe save the day first. So yeah, that is my plan for the rest of the day. Is I have quite a bit more of this book that I want to get through today, because I'm back to work tomorrow. It is my first day back at work for 11 days. I had a lot of annual leave that I had to use up before the end of the year, and I used it to go back home and have a visit. But now I have to go back to work, and I don't want to think about the sheer volume of emails I'm going to come into tomorrow. There's going to be loads. I'm already exhausted. But my plan for tonight is to read a little bit more of this book. I would like to get somewhat past the halfway mark, just so that I feel confident that I will get it finished tomorrow. I'm currently on chapter 8, and there are 17 chapters. I assume the last chapter is a hefty one. So a few more chapters I'd like to get done today. And I really want to have a bubble bath, because I'm so cold in my bones, and I think a bubble bath would help, and I think a hot chocolate would help a great deal. Marshmallows are therapeutic. So those are my plans. I will report back when I have made more progress. That probably won't be till tomorrow though. when I'm hopefully much, much cozier. Well, cheers. I finished my book and I'm very proud of that, because there was a point where I thought I maybe wasn't going to get this book finished. Not because it wasn't enjoyable, because it really, really was, but because, well, like I said, today was my first day back at work after 11 days of annual leave, and oh, it was the Mondayest of Mondays, and my brain feels a little bit like it's made of mashed potato. So when I finished work, I still had about 80 pages left, and I just didn't know if I was going to get through it, but I did, because, oh, where I had left the book at my lunch break was just like the start of the third act, where just everything was happening, and it was just so exciting. I am willing to say that my earlier statement of how I think that this could be my favourite book of the Scholomance series remains accurate. I'm very, very confident in saying that, because it really was. I really, really love this book, and now I can actually show it with its gorgeous cover and the gorgeous sprayed edges. Ah, it's very pretty. But also, not only is it very pretty on the outside, but it's got maps, kind of maps, not maps, diagrams of the school, which is so cool, because it's really interesting trying to get the academic setting in your head. So I really like that. Yeah, so I finished it today, and I really enjoyed it. I loved the growth that we got from the characters. So I was sort of joking that nobody liked Liesel, and I still don't know if they liked Liesel, but they definitely respected Liesel, and they definitely sort of appreciated and valued what she brought. And I really liked that we got to know a bit more about the characters from the first and the second book, and I grew to love all of them. I already had the warm and fuzzies towards the majority of the characters, apart from Orion, who was boring because he was rich and popular and good at sports. By sports I mean killing the monsters, and I just find that sort of character really boring to read about. So apart from him, I was really liking everybody in the earlier books, and I just really enjoyed getting to know the characters a little bit more. I found that this book was a much, much darker, which is kind of, I suppose, expected from a young adult series, because as the books go on, the students get older, and in this book they're 18 and they've all graduated, so they're out in the world, and the world is a dark place and there's lots of bad things happening, and I really enjoyed learning more about the world. So in the previous books it's all been about the school, and I loved finding out more about the school, but in this book I got to find out more about what caused the school to actually be created, and more about the enclaves. I'm sure you could have guessed from the title of the Golden Enclaves that it would be about enclaves, which enclaves are basically, I've been calling them wizard clubhouses, because they seem that way. They're just sort of the place where the wizards kind of live and keep lots of their power and their very special artifacts. And this book was a lot more political with regards to wizarding politics, which I found absolutely fascinating, and I was definitely into that. And it just felt a lot more like the characters were growing up and I was getting to join them with that, and I just felt like I'd seen these little kids grow up in the last few books, and it was just so lovely seeing them just band together. In this book there was the threat of a wizarding war, and that was the sort of the threat that was bubbling throughout the book. So I really felt like that added a little bit of tension. I loved Elle getting to learn more about herself, where she came from, and also there was a lot of jet setting. So I loved getting to see the wizarding clubhouses, as I will refer to them from now on. I loved being able to see how they varied from country to country. And a huge, huge part of the subject of this book was about sort of sacrifice and what would you be willing to sacrifice to for the greater good, and was it really for the greater good if there was that sacrifice. And I just thought it was so thought-provoking, and there was a lot of like people burying their heads in the sand, pretending they didn't know what was going on, but they did. And I thought that it was really important to have that brought to light. One thing I really loved about this book, and it's something that usually annoys me in young adult books because I'm a grumpy person sometimes, not often, and it's that the students, the graduates in this book, were fresh out of their school, and because of their graduation ceremony being basically a gauntlet against all of these monsters, they are in like prime shape for war, prime shape for fighting, for combat. And I thought that that was really important, because sometimes when I read a young adult book series and there's some sort of, you know, fisticuffs with the adults, I'm sort of going, well, you know, am I to believe that these people who are fresh out of school, that they are able to sort of hold their own against, you know, seasoned fighters? And I feel like in this series it was believable that they could hold their own because they had been training, and we had read in the previous books how hard they'd been training, what their graduation ceremony entailed, and that they had been building their own sort of weapons in order to survive graduation. And I think that it was really important to have that explained in the first two books, because it meant that when it came to the last book, I wasn't sitting going, they don't stand a chance. I was sitting going, yeah, they're in the best shape that, you know, any of these people in this world of magic ever are, because they have just fought the biggest fight of their life. So they're ready for the potential outbreak of a magical war. And I thought that that made it feel believable, or more believable. I know it's a fantasy book, but I bought it. I was in. I also cried. The last chapter, no, second last chapter, I couldn't see through my feelings. At one point I just put the book down and just declared that my emotions were too strong, sobbing into my cuff of my jumper. It was very, very emotional. And I know I cry at most books, but I really just felt it. There were 2 points where I kind of just sobbed in this book, because I'd grown to love these characters so much, and the things that they were going through, I was just like, no, you're too nice, you're too lovely for this. Oh, my heart. I really enjoyed this, and I did calculate, this is the 7th book by this author that I have read. I am a Naomi Novik fan. I must admit though that my favourite books by this author are actually her standalone books, Uprooted and Spinning Silver, which I maintain are 2 of my favourite fantasy books. And I have read the first 2, perhaps 3 books of Temeraire, which is her series, which is set during like Napoleon era and involves naval battles and dragons. And weirdly enough, when I started reading that book, I had just finished another book that was set around the same time and involved the Navy. It was a strange time in my life, and I don't know what made me pick those 2 books, but I do think that I preferred Scholomance series to the Temeraire series. I also felt like it was super important to sort of acknowledge that all of these, I keep calling them kids, they weren't kids, they were 18, they'd finished school, they'd gone through so much, and they were all coping with their own trauma, and for them to be fresh out of this horrible situation of graduation and then sort of thrown into basically trying to save the world. I thought that they just coped just so well, but there were points where they just sort of you could see the characters almost like shutting down, and they just, I feel like they felt authentic and raw, and I really just, my heart went out to those characters, and I just thought it was really good. My heart, my wee heart. And I'm absolutely delighted to have ticked off another series before the year is over, because I've not been doing too well in finishing my series, and I will be giving an update in a wee moment because I took the results of how well I've done in my goals to reduce my active series that I was reading, and the results are in, and they are not very good, but I tried. Not very hard, but I still tried. I also love that this book answered so many questions that I had in my head from previous books, so I feel like this is one of those series that just ties everything up in a nice little bow at the end. In my last video I mentioned there was a book where I sort of wanted a bit more action, and in this book I got more action, and that was what I wanted. I suppose it's a third book, it's gonna be full of action. I suppose the only thing I wished was different was that there was a lot of fade to black in this book, not just with romance bits but with plot, and that sort of took place more at the beginning and middle, where there were some things that I sort of thought I would quite like to have known what happened in that hut in the woods, or I would have liked to have known what happened in that conversation that took place over there, and it was just sort of left out. And I suppose it wasn't overly integral to the plot, I'm just maybe just nosy, but I think it would have been really interesting to have that added into the book. But I suppose then the book could have been a little bit long. But that's pretty much the only thing I would have wanted more of was, don't fade to black, let me know what's going on. Another thing I love about this series is that there's no obvious goodie versus baddie. Everyone has got good in them, everyone's got bad in them, and it's just kind of how they choose to utilize their good and their bad. And I think that it's, do you know what, it's probably just giving me all of those morals that I get from Disney films, but I didn't realise at the time, and I think that maybe might be it. But it was very sort of, don't judge a book by its cover, and just because somebody seems like they are the most evil person to have ever personed doesn't mean that they necessarily are. They might be, but they might not be. And I thought it was really clever, and this book just made me think, and I wanted to read it. I wanted to know what happened next, and I wanted to keep going. I wanted to get to the end, but I didn't want to get to the end because I didn't want it to be over. And it is over, and I'm a bit sad about that, but I'm also really happy because I had a great time reading it, and it also ticks off my fantasy prompt, which is for the film The Nutcracker and the Four Realms, and now that means I get to watch that film, which is good. Because my plan for tonight is to change my duvet. I am putting on the winter duvet because we are forecast for snow this week, and while I'm excited about that, my lungs are really sore from the cold air, and that's not going to be fun times, but I think I'll be okay as long as I can have my big duvet on. I'm very excited about that. And before I move on to chatting about my series update, I got a new book. I didn't buy it. It's not a haul, it was a gift. I received Killers of a Certain Age by Deanna Raybourn, which was a book that I have wanted for a little while, and it is about older women assassins. And they're basically assassins who are thought of now as being a bit old school and not really utilised that much, but then they get sent off for an all expenses paid trip, and they realise that they have been targeted by assassins. And I'm very excited about what's going to happen. I'm already rooting for our almost retired assassins to win because I love me an older protagonist. And I have heard I'm a bit anxious about this book because I've had it described as a cross between Charlie's Angels, which I loved, and Thursday Murder Club, which I hated. So I hope that this ends up being just delightfully charming and fun. That's what I want. And I was given this by my boyfriend because he went over budget with our Christmas gifts, and so I got this early. So now I know that for Christmas he's bought me books, and I don't know what they are, and I am excited. We don't really do gifts. Well, we do. We do a stocking for each other with a very strict budget, which is why I have this now, because he went over. And we sometimes do the at-home office Secret Santa if we pull each other's names out of the hat. But we didn't. I have myself for my Secret Santa this year, so we're only doing the stockings. And I've got books. I'm so excited. On to the series update. I posted a video back in, let's say January. Might not be, but it could be. I'll post a link in the description either way. I think it's a rare video where I'm wearing my glasses, so that's interesting. And in that video, I mentioned that I have a lot of active series, and I had a goal of finishing 5 of my active series. And I'm going to tell you now, I did not achieve those goals. Nope, did not finish those 5. And there were 5 series that I was relatively close to finishing them, kind of. Some of them I was. And I just didn't, because I just didn't feel like reading those particular books. And it's okay, because I will finish those series at a later date. Because the 2 series that I didn't finish, I do still want to go back to. So I started the year with 28 active series, which feels not that many, not really. And I added 7 new series to my series list. I have also given up on some series. There have been a few series where I've just sort of gone, for whatever reason, I don't want to continue reading them, and I've decided to score them out of my list. That makes up for 3 series, but I did finish 5 series. So it wasn't the 5 that I planned to finish, but it was 5. So I suppose a half win, a demi win. It's Christmas, it counts as a win. So I did finish the Dr. Greta Helsing series by Vivian Shaw, which was one of the series I wanted to finish. And I would maybe recommend the first and 2 books, because that last book just went, it jumped the shark. It couldn't see the shark. It just went wild. And it was a very, very different book than the rest of the series. While I get a tick for finishing that, I feel like it kind of put a downer on the whole series as a whole for me. I finished the Vampire Genevieve series by Kim Newman, which all have sprayed edges, which I can't hold these books in a sensible way, which is very pleasing to the eye. And I really enjoyed this series. I'm so delighted that I finished it. It's 2 books and 2 sets of short stories, and I really enjoyed it. The only sort of thing I want a bit differently from this series is that I would like a little bit more Vampire Genevieve from a series that's called the Vampire Genevieve series. But other than that, really enjoyed these. They were really dark, creepy stories, and just, I really enjoyed them. I think they'd be perfect for an October read. Saying that, I read them throughout the year, but these might be books that I return to in Octobers to come. I finished the Magic 2.0 series by Scott Mayer, and I wish I didn't, because I didn't enjoy, I think I had 4 books that I finished this year from it. It could have been 3, but the last 3 books I know I didn't enjoy, and I did almost just give up on the series, but I already owned them all on Audible. So I listened to them all, and I would recommend the first 2. Loved the first 2, but after that, it didn't do it for me. kind of felt a bit disappointed, and now I'm so irked because now this author is one of my most read authors for 2022 because I finished this series, and kind of annoyed by that because now when I go through my end of year stats, I'll see them and be like, oh, that series just let me down. Maybe there's time for me to read other authors. We all know Agatha Christie will be top of the pile, but maybe there's time for someone else to take second or third place. The cat knocked the camera, so it's moved. I also finished the This Poison Heart series by Kaylin Bayron, which I can say with 100% confidence is my favourite series of ever, all times. Favourite series. I thought that this series was utter perfection, and if this Wicked Fate is not in my top 3 books of 2022, I will demand a recount from myself because I cannot see any circumstances under which this is not one of my favourite books. I read this in May because I got an advanced e-copy and I haven't stopped thinking about it. So there's a very strong chance it will be there. I haven't done the maths yet for my end of year favourites, but this is definitely up there. And this was one of my favourite books of last year too. I think that this series is just, I have to reread them next year. I wanted to reread them, well, pretty much straight after finishing this Wicked Fate, but can't do that. I have to kind of let myself forget a little bit before going back. But I will be rereading these for years to come because I love them. I love them, love them, love them. And my final series that I finished in 2022 is Scholomance. Is the Scholomance series. And they do look all very gorgeous together. And this was such a fun series and such a thought-provoking series, and I really enjoyed it. So I'm very glad that this is the last series that I finished this year because I'm finishing my series on a high. I know that there are other books that I plan to read this year that are in series. The Ballad of Never After by Stephanie Garber, but I believe that series is still active. So I think if I finish that book this month, it's not going to tick off another series, I think. I don't know. I don't know if there's another one. So let's just pretend that there is and we'll live in hope. But that's me. That's me for another vlog. I hope I've not been too rambly. I would love to know how you have gotten on so far with your 2022 goals. As you can see, I've not done too well with some of mine, but I'm gonna just live with that. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!